Hello. I am still on my way to Bismarck, but I hope to get there this week because I'm getting tired of this trip. I will be passing very shortly the site of the DAPL pipeline protests, and I just wanted to say there is a reason I do this type of video. I think the ability to think, critically, the ability to question, the ability to reflect and have a little bit of empathy is so important. And at the time I'm filming this, I just come off the weekend of August 13th, August 14th, August 12th, August 13th, 2017. We got to see open racists protesting in Charlottesville. And we saw one of them take his car and drive it into a crowd of people and kill a woman. And I think that's a big piece that's missing. In what universe do we say that people are less because of the amount of melanin that's in their skin, or because of their religious beliefs or whatever? And that is a medieval attitude that a little bit of critical thinking could overcome. So that's why I film these videos, is my little contribution to critical thinking and possibly some empathy. And it's kind of funny that this week's topic matches right up with it. And this little spur-of-the-moment introduction has actually got timed pretty well, because we are coming up here on the town of Cannonball. You will not see the town of Cannonball. And just beyond it is the location of the pipeline protests. I'm going to be careful not to give too much opinion on the pipeline protests, mostly because I feel I don't know enough about them. So I will give you some facts, and then I will delve into my video. There is the turnoff to Cannonball right here, this first paved road you'll see here. Yeah. And, we'll now go take a look at the protest camp. So I had a little assistance to get the pictures you're about to see out the side window, and not much opportunity to redo it, and there was a police car behind us, so yeah, I didn't feel like pulling over. I've got one of those kind of cars that's suspicious looking anyway because it's so old. But anyway, most of the camp has been evacuated, so the protests are not to the scale you would have heard about over the winter. But there are still some protesters there. You will still see signs around the reservation that talk about water is life and so on. Or they'll talk about the black snake, which is what some people are calling the pipeline. So there's the protester camp, what's left of it. This is not the famous one. This is a different one. There's a sign right at the entrance that says to honk. I guess, yeah, see, there's where I got some help. It says to honk before you come in. I can't imagine living in that in the winter. So, especially a winter like we had last year. If you watched my minus 23 video, it was even colder up here. Now we're going down into a valley that's made by the Cannonball River, and I have some more footage from my assistant. It's anyway, down here is where a lot of the mess was and a lot of the protesting. The bridge that we're going to cross was actually closed up until late in the spring over the protests. This is the bridge that was blocked by some burning cars and so on. In fact, if I had been coming the other way, you would have been able to see some scorch marks on the bridge. That's the Cannonball River, kind of the valley, I guess. It's not the actual river itself. But anyway, down in here, this neighborhood is where the protest camp was, and it's kind of a valley that goes out to the river, and then the pipeline is quite close to this. There's the bridge. We're going over the Cannonball River. Woohoo! So again, this is my assistant helping me. I just want to say, if you ever have somebody help you, maybe have them practice with the equipment first. But anyway, somewhere out there, they've cleaned a lot of it up. The first time I came through here, it was a lot easier to tell than it is now that it was all cleaned up. But yeah, out there was a lot of waste. There were cars left. Actually, a lot of outsiders came in to protest. And my opinion, my editorial opinion, is they really didn't care. Some of them were just there for a party or for a chance to rabble-rouse. And that's why they left such a mess. I would say that there were times that the police were too heavy-handed. I think that's the pipeline there. I will also say that there were times I thought maybe the protesters went too far. I don't want to do any false equivalence. One of the things to keep in mind is the pipeline. It's off tribal land. No, that couldn't have been the pipeline. Anyway, it's off tribal lands, but it's in an area that's contested based on some old treaties. And, keep in mind, when these treaties were signed, too often they were not signed in good faith. They were signed with the idea of taking advantage of the Native Americans whose land this actually was. And that's where part of the problem lies. Also keep in mind that the original proposed route for this pipeline actually ran north of Bismarck. And for reasons you can just guess at, they decided, oh no, we can't do that. So they sent it north of the reservation instead. And you've seen enough of my driving videos. Even if we're north of Bismarck, the countryside looks just as empty as this. North Dakota is a lot of wide open space. So it wasn't fear of going through people's houses. Now, I'm not going to go as far as some of these extreme conspiracy theories that some have suggested, but I will say, yes, we need oil. Unfortunately, we still rely on it, but there is a lot more to the story than people would like to think. So we're out of reservation area now, and continuing north, we'll actually run mostly parallel to the Missouri River. Some of this unfortunately got into setting sun. I thought I had timed it better, and I actually did because it was glorious light, but when you start turning west, which part of this road does as you get close to Bismarck, you're looking into the sun. So unless I could have gotten a cloudy day, which is not likely this summer, I did the best I could. So most of the rest of this video, and I'm not sure where it's going to end up yet, I will talk about the main topic of the video. But I just felt that I should at least address the pipeline. I don't feel qualified to come to any conclusions on it and come down firmly on one side or the other. I know where my sympathies lie. You can probably guess where my sympathies lie. But I think I don't like to spout off an uninformed opinion, and I just don't feel like I have enough information to have an informed opinion on this, especially to put it on more permanent record like YouTube. So this whole video is actually going to be about skepticism versus cynicism. Of course, as always, I'm recording the audio for this in pieces as I have a little bit of free time. So I'm going to start out with a few examples. I make a statement here. I had eggplant for supper last night. All right, let's make another statement. There were 3 deer in my garden today. Ooh. I've got 4 statements here and then I'm going to talk about them. I am often confused with Brad Pitt. And in my 4th statement, a unicorn chased the 3 deer out of my garden. So which statements here would you question? And why would you question them? You would probably want evidence, if your basis for questioning. If you've watched my other videos where you get to see my face, you probably know that I'm never confused with Brad Pitt. I'm not blonde, I'm not... Actually, I am his age, though, come to think of it. But I'm not... So I won't say I'm not young, but... Anyway. So let's start with the eggplant for supper. That was a lie. Actually, I'm planning to have eggplant. Probably I'll be baking that Monday. But, and it's going to be picked from my garden, too. True story. But would you question that statement if I said I had eggplant for supper last night? Probably not. I mean, that's a pretty minor claim, and who the hell cares if I have eggplant or chicken or salmon or hamburger or I just skip supper. So that was a pretty minor statement. It doesn't need much evidence. Most people would just accept that at face value. If I tell you there were 3 deer in my garden last night, that could actually be true because I didn't sit out there and watch, and I definitely have seen some deer damage out there. You've actually seen some evidence that might be true. Actually, you've seen evidence for the eggplant too if you've watched all my videos because I've done a walkthrough and shown you the eggplant plants. In another video, I showed you the deer in my garden, except there was 2 of them, not 3 of them. So again, you don't need much evidence there. When I say I'm often confused with Brad Pitt, I should have said I'm often mistaken for Brad Pitt. You might want a little more evidence for that. You might want to look at a picture of me and say, ooh, does he look like Brad Pitt? Oh, hell no. Yeah, Actually, I was inspired for that one because I was walking into a store and a woman says to me, you look just like that actor. And I said, what actor? And she says, oh, the one that's in all the movies. And I'm just like, okay, which one? Steve Buscemi? I don't know. I didn't say that, but I said, which one? She says, I can't remember his name, but you look just like him. So, apparently I look like somebody, but I'm going to guess it's not Brad Pitt. I'm guessing I'm more at the Steve Buscemi end of the actor spectrum. But yeah, that's a claim you probably would want a little bit of evidence. If I'm telling you something like a unicorn chased the 3 deer out of my garden, you're going to want a lot of evidence. Like you'll probably want me to go out there with my camcorder and videotape it. And you'll want to see the original chip just to make sure I'm not making this up or didn't do some photo editing or CGI or something. I mean, that's a pretty extreme claim. So, anyway, the moral of the story is the more outlandish the claim, the more evidence you want for it. You're not going to question me when I say I had eggplant for supper last night. You will question me when I start talking about... I'm just moving the computer because it's making fan noises. You will question me when I start talking about the unicorn that's chasing the deer out of my garden. And that's just it. I could lie about anything, including something as minor as what I had for supper. What I did have for supper tonight is hardly anything. Actually, I had 2 slices of bread. That's true, by the way. I just wasn't hungry, and yeah, that's all I ate. But I got enough padding to last until I'm hungry again. So, and don't... One of the things that we're often confused by, just because something's true doesn't make it believable. I remember... Not in the town I live in now. I used to live in a much smaller town of about 500 people. So one day I'm walking to work, because that's what I've always done, is walk to work. And I walked by a neighbor's house, and he is out there in the yard with a rifle looking up into a tree. And he says to me, "There's a squirrel up there." And I said, "Okay." And I just kept walking. Now, I've told that to some people, and they're like, "Yeah, right. Nobody would pull their gun out in town." Well, clearly they don't live in small town North Dakota. But this is one of those stories. It's a little bit hard to believe, but it's actually true. Now, I don't have any evidence for it. You're just going to have to trust me. But, that kind of gives the whole idea here. Or there's kind of a story about a Martian decides to write a book about life on Mars. He sends it to the publisher here on Earth, and the publisher on Earth reads the manuscript, and he's like, "No, fake. No way this is real." And the Martian comes down to Earth, and he says, it's all true. And he pulls off his human costume and shows that he's Martian. The publisher says, "Yeah, so what? Nobody's going to believe it, even if it is true." Because sometimes the truth is, as they say, stranger than fiction. So I would say just approach things with the proportionate amount of skepticism. And I'm going to define skepticism here in a minute. In fact, actually, that is a good point. I said I'm going to define skepticism here in a minute. Slight digression here. One of the dangers is in conversation, meanings can change. Like the word theory has a totally different meaning if you're talking with your friends than it does in the scientific setting. So sometimes it's helpful if we all agree on what we're talking about first, before we actually delve into the topic. So here's what I get into skepticism. Don't believe anything without strong evidence. Challenge any unsupported claims, but again, keep it in proportion. If I tell you there is a glass of red wine sitting about 18 inches from my right hand, I don't think I need to pull out the camera on my laptop, film it, and prove it to you. I mean, it actually is there, and I'm drinking it, and if my words get more slurred as I make this video, that's why. But anyway, keep it in proportion. If I say, that aliens landed in my yard last night, and one of them is sitting on the couch right now, you better demand some evidence for that. So keep it in proportion. Science actually does involve a lot of skepticism. Anytime you make a claim in science, it needs to be backed up by clear evidence, and it needs to be backed up by reasoning. Both. That's why science teachers now are making a bigger emphasis on that whole CER, claim, evidence, reasoning. We can't just be spouting things off. That's not what science is, even though pop culture will make you believe that's what it is. If I tell my freshmen, which I'm going to be doing in a really short amount of time, that matter is conserved, it'd be nice to have some evidence. So before we even get there, they get to see that it's conserved. We use Alka-Seltzer, create a gas, and find out that it's conserved. We dissolve salt in water and find out that it's conserved. What else do we do? We react sulfur, and I can't remember if it's iron or copper, but I guess I'll get a reminder here. Either one would work, actually. And we find out mass is conserved. And we melt ice and find out mass is conserved. So they get a lot of evidence before I make the claim that, hey, mass is conserved. And then we do the law of conservation of mass. And I can hear the creationists out there howling and saying, "That's a law, that's not a theory." No, a law is a theory. It's just a fancier word for theory. Now, skepticism is not the same as doubt, although doubt is certainly part of skepticism. I might doubt a claim. You come up to me and say, aliens don't come to North Dakota because it's so flat. They mostly land in Alabama. because it's warmer there and they like humidity. And I will say, yeah, I kind of doubt that. I kind of doubt aliens are landing anywhere, but that's another story. See, there was no evidence there. There was some reasoning. Apparently aliens like humidity, and you get more humidity in Alabama than you do in North Dakota. True story. But the focus should be on the evidence. Look, in Alabama, there are all these photographs of aliens meeting people, hanging out in Main Street, getting drunk and rabble-rousing in all the small towns. Whatever the evidence is. By the way, you can see the Missouri River off there. Really pretty. I love this drive. I don't do it often because it adds a lot of time to my trip. But anyway, the focus should be on the evidence. Don't doubt things because the claim's outlandish. Doubt it because of the limited evidence and reasoning. And that goes back to my whole Martian story. Now, the danger here is that you can easily become a cynic. Cynics tend to believe the worst. Cynics generally believe a human action is motivated by selfishness. And anytime you give... here's what I'm talking about with the sun. We're headed west now. So, god damn it, that's annoying. I don't know why... Yeah. Alright, anyway, back to the story. Cynics, anytime you read about a selfless act, like, a soldier falls on a grenade to save his fellow soldiers. Or somebody says, no, it's the evidence. It's not really my view. It's just, this is where the evidence leads. They doubt it. It was actually also a Greek philosophy in, I want to say the 4th century BC. I didn't write this down though, so take this with a slight grain of salt. They believed that the cynics of the time believed that virtue is the only good. The essence of virtue is self-control, surrender to external influences beneath human dignity. Well, we're all influenced by external factors, so don't even start. So I'll give you an example. Now, I'm going to use a generic I'm turning the camera again. I'm going to use a generic education example. I'm not going to use I don't know the word I'm looking for, but I'm not going to do it. Education is always has new reforms. I've actually worked with a few people like what I'm about to describe here. In fact, I was very close to becoming one of them, but luckily I became self-aware of what I was doing. So let's just say you find a reform that increases the pass rates in a course. Now, skeptic is going to follow the evidence, and skeptic is going to say, yeah, it's worth following that reform. Maybe we should implement that here. They'll want to study it. They'll want to replicate it. The cynic is going to say, okay, yeah, you did improve to a 92% pass rate, but what about those 8% who didn't pass? What are you going to do about them, huh? So to the cynic, no reform is ever enough. And I've worked with them. You're so excited about something, they say, yeah, but what about this group of students who it's not going to help? It's going to help a whole bunch of other students. So nothing is ever good enough for these people. Now, I just want to point out, nothing wrong with dissent. One of my problems with education is we love to jump on bandwagons and on new fads, and then we abandon them before they ever have a chance to work. Or we implement them so quickly that we've never actually studied them and figured out how to properly implement them. And so, yeah, a little dissent is necessary, and that's where a skeptic would come in. A skeptic would say, This whole open classroom idea, do you have like some data to back that up? And I'll tell you, open classroom, that was the idea of let's build schools without walls. School boards and administrators love that idea because if you don't put walls between classrooms, it becomes a lot cheaper to build a school. Now, my suspicion, and I don't have evidence to back this up, so grain of salt, my suspicion is somewhere a few teachers got stuck in a temporary situation because of overcrowding in a school or a school burned down or something, where maybe they're teaching in a gym or some other big wide open space, and worked together and somehow made the open classroom thing work. When open classrooms were implemented nationwide, this wasn't with teachers who had worked together and agreed, hey, let's try this thing out. Let's figure out how we can work together in this space. This was administrators saying, surprise, no walls. And the teachers, if you were to go to these open classrooms, you would have discovered that the teachers created their own walls. Didn't do anything for the noise. Because yes, if your classroom is doing anything, it's going to be noisy. If it's just you lecturing like I am right now, it's going to have noise. And it's going to distract from what you're supposed to be doing. There is a time and a place for an open classroom, and there is a time and a place for a closed classroom. I actually took classes in a school this summer. It was a brand new school, Legacy High School in Bismarck. All the classrooms are self-contained, but they're also designed to open up. Some of them have accordion walls. Some of them have garage doors. There's wide open space in the hallways for students to do group work. They get the best of both worlds that way. So, anyway, a little bit of dissent is important for when a school tries to implement reform. Dissent is not a problem unless you're some kind of freaky authoritarian, and I've worked for them too. Now, what I like about skepticism is your skeptic is going to ask for evidence. Your skeptic is going to say, what's your evidence that this open classroom thing is going to work? Now, to an administrator, especially one who's a bit of an authoritarian, it's going to sound a lot like cynicism. But here's the difference. The administrator says, well, I have these studies, and actually shows them, doesn't just say, well, studies show. Which studies, Mr. Administrator? Are you disrespecting me? Maybe you want to go work in a new school. Yeah, I've worked for them. So it can sound like cynicism, but the difference is that it is open to evidence. The cynic is going to say, well, it's never going to work here. This is North Dakota. Our kids just aren't open to these newfangled ideas. Our parents are going to oppose it. Most of the teachers here are just not going to do it. Wow, really? And that's what a cynic is. Your skeptic is willing to try it with evidence. And of course that sets aside your whole early adopter thing, because sometimes you try to reform even if you're not sure if it's going to work or not. That can be an uncomfortable place to be. But your big thing with your cynics is they're going to shoot things down based on personal belief. They believe in the worst of human nature. I sometimes will rag on North Dakota because it is a very right-wing state. I've encountered a lot of extremely closed minds here. But I know people who will tell me that certain reforms in education will not work in North Dakota. Well, why not? Well, they can't tell me why. They've just decided same things I did, but their view is it can't change. My view is people can change. And I guess I'm getting a little too specific there, but you can kind of see what I mean. But both these sides, your skeptics and your cynics, can be a thorn in the side of somebody who's an authoritarian. Now, authoritarian is quite different from an authority. I answer to my principal, I answer to my superintendent, I indirectly answer to the school board, but that's a different situation, which some school board members still haven't figured out. But that doesn't, just because I respect their position doesn't mean I have to go along with their commands and just blindly follow them. I have left schools because I was expected to just blindly follow and do what I'm told and not question and not think for myself. There's a few schools, because I have kind of been looking at other jobs, that I've been warned against. Do not work there because they micromanage. So, well. And here's one of the dangers of cynicism. A cynic is generally pretty negative and unpleasant to be around. You tell a cynic something exciting that you did in your classroom, and you're like, "Oh boy, this is so wonderful, and the kids enjoyed it, and wow, we got such great results." And they're like, "Yeah, but what about this group of kids that didn't get it?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, they didn't get it, but I reached so many more students than I usually do." "But you didn't reach all of them, did you?" So I usually avoid those people, and I have been accused of not being a team player because I avoid those people, but whatever. My advice with those kind of negative, toxic people is avoid! Much as possible. You still have to work with them, unfortunately, but do your best to avoid it. But one of the dangers of cynicism is it's easy to fall into conspiracy theories. Become a cynic that just... anything the administration proposes is harmful to education because they've been out of the classroom. No matter what they do, it's wrong. And that's a mild conspiracy theory. Have you ever met somebody who thinks 9/11 was committed by the U.S. government? Or other groups who think it was committed by the Israeli government? No, it was committed by a bunch of rogue terrorists, a large proportion of whom, by the way, came from Saudi Arabia, one of our allies. But we're going to attack Iran. Sorry. What conspiracy theories will do is they focus, you remember I said the cynics will focus on, what about these that it doesn't work for? Well, conspiracy theories do that on steroids. By the way, somewhere along here there's a big military cemetery. I don't know if we passed it or not, and I wasn't paying attention to the screen because I had to move I had to move the computer away from the microphone because it's making fan noises, which is what it does when I do video stuff. Sorry, I just took a sip of the wine that I may or may not have 18 inches away from my right hand. So anyway, the conspiracy theories focus on your holes and your questions. And they don't really have evidence. They have questions that aren't answered at all, or not answered completely. One of the ones about 9/11 is about there's no way that the steel in the Twin Towers could have melted. There's some crazy conspiracy theories about the assassination of John F. Kennedy in Dallas, Texas. Right now, with everything going on in the White House, there's some conspiracy theories about, what's his name? Brannon, who's just fired. Or even, today, I wish I would have kept the reference. I might have to dig through my internet history and see if I can find it. I read an article today It was all about how this is part of Trump's master plan to destroy the Republican Party to ensure Democrat rule forever in the United States. Now I really want to find that one. That one was entertaining. They're just... I think a lot of the evidence for creationism is this. They find something that we don't yet... Oh yeah, I definitely missed the cemetery, because now we're coming into Mandan, North Dakota. But anyway, Alright, sorry, I'm doing two things at once here. I'm trying to look at the screen and trying to look at my outline and trying to do a talk, and I need to focus better. Which apparently I was trying to do with the camera. Holy cow, is that thing moving around. Alright, so what I would suggest, the best thing you can do is just be a realist. The reality is, we are not as objective as we would like to believe. I've never met anybody who says, yeah, everything I believe, it's all taken on faith. And just whatever influences me at the time and whatever culture I grew up in. I don't know anything. No. We all like to think we're very objective. All of our views are based on evidence. And, we're logical thinking people. But we're not. And just realizing that about yourself, that kind of goes along with the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is that basically the more you know about a topic, the less you think you know. So people who know very little, ask your local hillbilly to talk about global warming, and they'll be full of stuff. They know more than their goldarn 97% scientists, goldarn it. And they'll goldarn find that one scientist that agrees with them, goldarn it. So, realize that you might be wrong. And always be open to new evidence that says that you're wrong and that you need to reevaluate. Maybe it's only you misunderstood or you've got some of the nuance wrong. You may be clouded by your own biases, and I still want to do a video on biases, cognitive biases. One of my commenters made the remark that its cognitive biases might require a diagram, and as I've read up on the topic, I have a bunch of links ready, just don't have a video for it. I'm tending to agree with him. There is, by the way, a very nice diagram on Wikipedia, which I might use because it's open source, but that's another story. But, and realize also, nobody has complete and utter evidence. We don't have what they would call proof. Mathematicians get to have proof. That's it. The rest of us have evidence that supports or rejects our hypothesis. And of course, if I'm going to talk on an issue, I'm learning what does and doesn't work in my classroom. I can speak somewhat intelligently about managing a classroom, but there's people that know a lot more than I do, and I read them. That's how I keep improving. I hope that I improve as much as I've improved in the last 18 years over the next 18 years, just by reading what experts say and learning from the experts. We have to rely on experts. You cannot know enough about most subjects. Do not ever believe in common sense. There is no way to measure what's just common sense, because often common sense is wrong. Take a physics class and discover how much of what you know about the world that's common sense is just simply not true. And of course, know that if we're going to rely on experts, some people that are called experts or marketed as experts are not actually experts. We're in Mandan now. I totally missed the cemetery. Sometimes these experts are an expert in a different field, but they're being marketed just because they do have that PhD behind their name. Don't look too closely at the credentials. You know, the Creation Museum that Ken Ham runs loves to do that with its experts. Some experts are just simply paid off. Exxon paid off some climate experts. We knew about global climate change long before it became a thing in the news, and Exxon pretty successfully silenced it. And this is a little bit of a conspiracy theory, I'll just be honest, but I kind of wonder if there's a little bit of that still going on with all these climate change deniers like Rush Limbaugh running around. So, and sometimes your experts are just ahead of their time. They have figured things out, and the scientific consensus, which is not the same as a social consensus, the scientific consensus has not yet agreed with them. Einstein was pretty darn radical with his whole, time dilation thing. And a lot of the physicists just couldn't accept it. And then they died, and the new physicists were like, yeah, it makes sense. We're now headed down, I guess, the main street in Mandan. I can't remember what it's called. Maybe it's called Main Street. Who knows? And Einstein, in his turn, had a big problem with quantum mechanics. So there's always that possibility. And of course, everything we know is incomplete. But again, your experts are the ones most likely to know just how incomplete your knowledge is. There's an old saying, one of the teachers where I used to work had it actually as a poster on his wall that said, why is it that the people that know the least know it the loudest? I'm going to take you up. Boy, I can't remember the name of this road. It's been too long since I drove it. Anyway, this is going to take us into Bismarck in the very seriously not photogenic direction. So, anyway, just be aware that everything you know is incomplete. You are not an expert. And even if you are an expert, your knowledge is incomplete. But I probably don't need to tell you that. Dunning-Kruger effect. And just in general, working with people, if the people you're working with can't offer solutions, if all they can do is tear down the solutions that are put forward, but they have nothing to offer of their own, are they really worth listening to? These are negative people. They might actually be right. I will give them that. But they're not helpful. In general, these negative people, these cynics, are toxic. These are the people who will destroy a new idea before it ever gets a chance. They are harmful. Early on in my career, I made the mistake of hanging out with people like that and thinking, wow, these people are wise, and they know more than I do. But I've realized since then, these are the people who just make you hate everything. These are the people who you have a great day, you're bubbling with excitement and joy, and then you talk to them and sucks all the joy right out of you. Don't let them do that. Don't give them the opportunity to do that. Hang out with positive people. And yeah, I know what a Pollyanna is. A Pollyanna always sees the best of everything. And yeah, I've seen that insipid Disney movie about Pollyanna. That makes me sound like a cynic, doesn't it? But there is realism, there is cynicism, and then there are those people that can just stick their heads in the sand and never pay attention to what the real world really is. And that's what a Pollyanna is. They just don't see the real world. Because not everything is good. Not everybody is noble. Not everybody wants the best. And there are a lot of people who think they want the best, but are destructive. I know that I left at least one job because I let the negative people influence me. And I let them make me think this is the worst of all possible places to work. And it really wasn't. Because I ended up in a far worse situation. Now, in fairness, ending up in the far worse situation is what woke me up and made me realize what these cynics are and how dangerous they are. And it eventually landed me in a much better situation, which is where I'm at now. But now I'm to the point I'm starting to think, you know, there is much better out there. Why am I still here? But that's a topic for another video. Now, we're about to go over what's called the Memorial Bridge. This crosses the Missouri River between Mandan and Bismarck. When I first moved to the state, this was one of those old-fashioned bridges that has the iron girders and everything above you and below you. I don't remember the name for the type of bridge. That was torn down and replaced by this. It also had the iron grating underneath you and everything. It was kind of cool. I wish I'd had a dash cam back then, especially since I lived at that time about 60 miles north of Bismarck and could go down there anytime I wanted. Now that Bismarck is 3 hours away, I don't go to Bismarck that often. And I took you on the long trip this time, so yeah. There is some special meaning to the stuff you see there, I just don't know what it is. And I do appreciate that the new Memorial Bridge remains a 4-lane. The old one turned into a 2-lane as you crossed the river, but it was 4 lanes on either side, which meant ugly merging when there was lots of traffic. Now, I know all you living in the big cities are like, lots of traffic? Hello, dude! Well, I have always, my entire life, lived in small towns. So, yeah, traffic makes me nervous. Even a little traffic. Which, if you've ever wondered why I haven't gone to a fountain pen show, traffic is a big piece of the reason why, because it scares the hell out of me. Flying into Buffalo, New York, and then driving to where my parents live in rural Pennsylvania, that piece in Buffalo scares the hell out of me. Buffalo isn't even that huge of a city. So, that's my reality. I guess the nearest pen show to me is Denver, Colorado. I've never been to it. I had a few viewers over the past few weeks suggest I should go there. And I'm thinking real strongly about it for next year. I'm thinking even more strongly about a pen show somewhere in the summer when I don't have to take time off of work, but that's another story. So we'll see what happens. But the trouble with pen shows is they're always in the city. And I don't want to go to the city. I hate the city. It's so hard to drive. Especially an unfamiliar city where I don't know where I'm going. If you ever driven the wrong way down a one-way street, I did that once. Brandon, Manitoba. Oh my God, was that horrible. just didn't even see the one-way signs, and I'm like, oh shit. And I imagine everybody going the other way was like, oh shit. So, you know. So this is kind of the back way to come into Bismarck. I don't come in this way very often. I just did this time for whatever reason. You know, it's kind of neat. The only reason I'm still babbling and keeping this going is it'll take you through downtown Bismarck, and then I'll probably close the video off somewhere after that. Take another sip of my wine that I claim is 18 inches away from my right hand. So, to sum up the whole video, none of us are as realistic and evidence-based as we would like to believe. And a little humility in realizing that is absolutely essential. And, wow, convenient. Right here we are in Bismarck's Main Street. I don't know if it's called Main Street. I can't remember. But on your left there, that building was, I don't know if it still is, but it was kind of a huge antique store with multiple stories. Also some apartments on some levels, which was awkward. There's a neat park here with a steam engine. In fact, I think we're right beside it right now. And in a very old, very cool church. Bismarck downtown isn't the ugliest downtown I've ever seen. It's, but it is pretty lacking in a variety of stores. I kind of like walking around it like once every few years, just for giggles and snorts. There's not a lot of stores that just the random shopper would want to wander into. Some furniture stores, there's a vacuum cleaner, like for your carpet store. Let's see, a shoe repair shop, a Red Wing shoe store, which was a big disappointment. Used to be a Mexican restaurant that's no longer, but I used to love it. It was in the old train depot and really cool. Peacock Alley is a good place to eat. There's a few decent places to eat. I guess there's a few clothing stores I haven't really gotten into because they weren't my type of clothing, but overall it's just kind of you think you're there in the city, there'd be all this cool stuff, and honest to God, I'd rather walk around the downtown in my small town, even though the downtown in my small town is dying and a bunch of the stores are boarded up. There's just more stuff to visit. And what Bismarck is doing is it's following what a lot of American towns and cities are. They're built around cars, not around people. They are not walkable, which is a shame. That's a piece of European cities I wish we could emulate here. But anyway, I'm running dry on things to say, and before I say anything really horrible about Bismarck and shoot down any chance I'll ever have of getting a job there, I will quickly change topic. Next week I'm going to do something really special. I visited a unique North Dakota location, and I'm going to do a bullfrog type video. Not my normal driving video, so don't look for any deep philosophy next week, but look for a really cool place in North Dakota. At least I thought it was cool. And the bullfrog version of how I got there and back. So until then, I'll let the video run out. We'll go past St. Alexis. Mainly I'm running the rest of this video because I run to the grocery store to pick up supper, actually. Why I didn't go to one of the many restaurants in Bismarck? Yeah, I don't remember why. It was March 5th. I have no idea. But anyway, I didn't go to a restaurant and picked up food at the grocery store, and it'll just kind of give you an idea what I mean when I say it is not walkable. I hate that. I can see where you might have a big downtown. Oh, look, I'm about to run a yellow light. Oh, it turned red while I was under it. I can see where you might have a big downtown area where your main shops are. I just wish all the shopping areas weren't so strung out. That's a hospital. Anyway, so the rest of this video is going to run out in silence. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.